Yo, welcome back to another episode of the High Value Agent Podcast, where we inspire people to create a better life through real estate. And I am going to share with you the secret to selling more houses. Okay. And it's not going to be what you think it is. I'm going to give you very tactical nuances and approaches that you can take that's going to help you not only be able to help more sellers get to the finish line, but be able to increase your retention rate when it comes to clients, right? The name of the game that we're playing is to, yes, we got to generate opportunities. We got to convert them from lead to client, but man, we got to get them to becoming a past client. But even more importantly, we got to turn that past client into an advocate. And so when you're working with sellers, and especially if they're on the market, you have to make sure you follow a process that is going to ensure you are creating an advocate in that client. Okay. And so let's assume you did the right, you follow the right process of generating the opportunity, getting in front of the client, presenting to them, and you have influenced them to make a decision to hire you. Okay. Let's assume you did all that. Now, what do you do? That's what I want to talk about because this is the key. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? You're at the listing consultation. They've agreed to sign a contract. They are now officially your client based on that situation. There is an approach you must take that most agents don't take. That is future pacing the client as to what is going to happen over the next 21 days. Okay. Because the first 2 to 3 weeks of you working with that seller while they're on the market is extremely critical. Extremely critical. So your job is to future pace or set the expectation as to what is going to happen. And then while you're going through that process with them over those first 2 to 3 weeks, you are sharing with them real time what you're doing. That is important because if a seller does not know what you are doing, they are going to assume that you are doing nothing. I'm going to say that one more time. If a seller does not know what you're doing behind the scenes, no, just understand they already believe that you're probably overpaid. They understand the concept of my equity I am using to invest in this person, and I'm not even guaranteed a return. They know that. If you've ever been to a listing consultation or a buyer consultation, if you do those, which you should if you don't, and you've had to negotiate your commission or you've had to protect your commission, right? As you're in negotiation between you and the client, it's because they come into it not seeing that you provide much value. And so the only value that you can actually provide to them, because you didn't do a good job articulating your value, is how much they're going to pay you. And then at that point, they believe the lower they pay you, the higher the value you provide, then just based on they're going to pay you less. But the only reason why that happens is because coming into it naturally, clients don't see that we are that valuable because they believe we're commodities, that we're all the same, that we all do the same stuff, and that's put their house on the MLS, and then we sit back and wait. And that's just not true, right? If you're listening to this podcast, is because you are a high value agent and you are different from others. Being high value means you are opposite of low value. The client, respectfully, it's not like that they hate you or anything, but they typically don't see you as a high value agent. They assume you're low value. Why? They probably had an experience with a low value agent. It didn't go the way they wanted it to. And so now they have trauma, or they know somebody that had a bad experience. And then they come into the relationship with you assuming the same thing. But you're going to prove them different because you know going into it that if I don't communicate to them very clearly and directly what the process is, what is going to happen, what I and my team are going to do on the back end, knowing they're not going to see me every day, If they know that, and then I actually update them and keep them informed as I'm doing it, then they're going to see value in me. We have to remember that when you are stepping into a relationship with a client, you're a leader. You are the leader. You are helping them make informed decisions. And so being a leader means we have to make sure our sellers are understanding that we have to handle pricing the home correctly. The most important leadership moment that we have, or one of the most important moments that we have with the seller, is going to be how we handle pricing, not just when we hit the market, but after we hit the market. That is very, very, very important. What I mean is price adjusting the house if we're not getting the results that we're expecting to get. Now, some people call it price reductions, some people call it price improvements. I don't use that term or those terms with the client. I don't. I really want you to think about this. If I were to talk to the client and I said, hey, let's reduce the price, number one, I would never tell them, hey, we need to reduce the price, because my job is to help them tell me that we need to adjust the price, right? But just think about the word price reduction, or the phrase, or the two words, price reduction. The word reduction in their standpoint means they're getting less. That's just how it's going to click for them. Like, I am reducing my price, therefore I'm going to make less money. That is a negative reaction to a phrase, to a term. I'm sorry, a term, right? Price improvement does the same thing. Hey, we are improving the price. Now, that is a marketing term to get buyers interested, understood, right? Maybe use it for your marketing. But when you're communicating back and forth with the client, I would not use price improvement, because they are going to correlate that as to they are making less money. They're taking the hit. Now, price adjustment it's formal, it's professional. And I mean, essentially at that point, it's not as emotional. When you're having this conversation, like, no matter what, they're going to take some of this personal, but from your standpoint, you shouldn't. Your approach in not only using the term price adjustment, but just having this conversation, you are simply helping them. You're interpreting the data and the buyer behavior to them so they can make a decision as to what is best for them. Okay. Well, almost knocked my mic over. That's very important. Now, I want you to take, like, one of the best ways when you are working with a seller and you're on the market, one of the best ways to understand which direction to go or what is actually happening with that house is to get feedback on your showings. The market is going to give you feedback in one primary way, and that is going to be the showings. So never, ever, ever allow a showing to happen on your listing and you don't get feedback on it. Okay? Never allow that. That is unacceptable. That is malpractice. Like, you do not do that. Okay? Now, the data or the feedback, everything that you're getting, that gives you clear expectations and a framework to have confident conversations with the client. What do I mean? So when you have the data, you want to make sure that, well, even before you get to the point of talking about an adjustment, earlier I mentioned you need to future pace as soon as possible before you hit the market. When you're at the consultation, you got the contract signed, set the expectations with them, future pace them. Again, the first 2 to 3 weeks are going to be critical while we're on the market. The market will tell us quickly if we're positioned correctly. These are words, these are phrases that you use with the client. Mr. Client, one thing that is important to you to know is and critical for you to know is that the first 2 to 3 weeks on the market are critical. The reason why is because that is going to tell us that time period, the market will tell us very quickly if we are positioned correctly. You need to say that to the client. You also need to let them know that showings are our best friend. And I am going to track showings closely. Now, the reason why showings are our best friend is because showings equal interest. No showings equals the market saying it is overpriced or the house is beautiful, but not at this price. Am I willing to move forward on it or to even look at it? Okay. So showings are your best friend. Another thing is you have to know the averages in your market to know whether a listing is underperforming or performing well. So what I mean is not just showings. Showings are your best friend, but you need to make sure you understand the averages in your market. Average days on market, list price to sell price ratio, the number of price adjustments that you typically see in your market per month, the the number of number of showings you need to have on average to get it under contract. Like these are data points that you should know. So then you have the context needed to know and articulate to the client whether our listing is underperforming or not. By the way, you need to make sure you know it well enough to where you can articulate it very confidently to the client. Now, I want to make this clear because we love our clients. We love our clients, man. We love them. And I know that if you're listening to this podcast, you care about the clients that you support, that you help. You care about them. But that doesn't change the fact that they are going to do everything that they can to distract you from what the issue is if the house is underperforming. Let me explain. You are on the market for 2 weeks and you have one showing. Client tells you, I think we need to change this marketing approach, or I think we need to add more photos to the listing, or I think we need to do more open houses, or I cool. They tend to point the finger towards marketing, and they do that to distract you because the reality is, and they know it, the home's not selling because of marketing or the lack thereof. It's selling because the house is not priced correctly. If a listing is underperforming, okay, if it's underperforming its expected showing range, again, you got to know that data. How many showings on average do I need to get it under contract? If it's underperforming, it is not a marketing issue, it is a pricing issue, period. But they will do everything in their power to distract you. Now, you have to make sure that you're leading this conversation early, right? Don't be reactive. Like don't wait for them to become frustrated. Don't wait for until you're on the market for months. Use the data that you have that you pulled to guide a proactive adjustment that will protect their momentum and their hard-earned equity. Okay? That is extremely important because if you don't, you're going to be reactive, you're going to be blamed for everything, and you're not going to have an advocate of a client. So when you are talking to the seller, like it is important that you reframe like every conversation that you have, the framework is very simple. Because a lot of people will say, if you talk about adjusting the price, they think it's going to sell at the price. And the reality is it probably won't. It depends on your market, right? You got to know the data. But the initial price is just simply you testing the market. Now, you want to do a good job of creating a healthy range based on what the market is telling you. This is not your price. This is the market saying, hey, this house will sell in between this number and this number. And that range could be $20,000 to $50,000 wide. You don't want to be too wide, right? But that's just a test. You're testing the market. But the market will respond with the truth. It will. Like, it's going to give you a response, and that response is going to be real. And so now it's your job to take that reality, understand why, and then interpret that reality to the client to then adjust the strategy. Make sense? Like, that is key. That is the key. So we are leaders in this relationship, and leaders don't react. Leaders are proactive, right? They get out in front of things. And so that is extremely, extremely critical. So what I want you to do is I want you to make sure that you are future pacing the client. Again, setting the expectations. Do this before going on the market. Keep in mind, you should do this continuously. You may have heard this term before, but this is a term that we created on our team here at Silver Lining Real Estate Group. ERF, educate, remind, future pace. Every conversation you have with an active client, or a client that's under contract, or a client that's on the market, you are consistently educating them, you're reminding them, and you are future pacing them. Okay. And then once they're on the market, you make sure you follow a process that allows you to be in communication with them at least once a week, and you are emailing them information about what has transpired over the past week, showings, feedback from showings, how many price adjustments over the past 7 days, how many new listings that could affect our price, right? Like our competitors, how many new listings that hit the market over the past week, how many listings that actually, they actually got through the process and closed in the past week, right? And you should be sharing that data on top of what you've done in the past week. What have you done? For example, you're an agent, and you held an open house, and you called through the neighborhood to invite people to the open house, and you've asked those neighbors, do you have a buyer who could be interested? And then you sent out an email to your entire database. Maybe you have 1,000 people in your database. You sent them a e-flyer letting them know this home is on the market. You door knock, like, give them a breakdown as to what you did personally over the past week. Now you can even take a next step. Excuse me. You can let them know how many people have viewed the property over the past week. That's an option. You can let them know how many people viewed the property over the past week. Facebook, Zillow, um, social media of any sort, homes.com. Like, I think a lot of times you can gather that intel, your website, but I want you to package it all into an email. And I want you to email them, and then I want you to call, like, get a phone conversation with them to unpack what was in the email. They need to hear your voice. And you're going to do that every week. But on the third week, every single time, you're going to ask for an adjustment. Okay. You're going to ask for an adjustment. And if you get the adjustment, you're going to make a promise. You're going to make a promise. You're going to promise to them that, yes, we are repositioning your property on the market, and I am now going to notify every agent in our MLS of the price adjustment. I will also personally call all buyers that looked at the property that we know, and all the agents that showed the property to their buyer. That way, everyone is aware of the price adjustment. Make a promise. Make a promise. Like, I call this give, ask, give. Give, ask, give. Okay. And if you do that, then you will sell more houses. And if you do this over the course of 3 to 5 years, you will be the top agent in your market, and you will earn the right because you've done this so long, right? You followed a proven process, and the results compounded. And that past client now is an advocate, and that just compounds. You will get to a point where you have true equity in your business. And what that means is now you have a database of people that love you, that respect you, and they will send everybody that they know your way. On top of whenever they need help again, they're going to you. You are the go-to. That is how you become the number one resource in your market. Okay. And that's how you sell more houses. That's the secret. So, all right, y'all, I'm gonna put a bow on this one. As always, my commitment is to give, to support, to contribute. I want to see you win. And all I ask is for you to, listen, share with a friend, somebody who this message could help support their business, and leave us a review, like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. Y'all be strong. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.